It's 4 o'clock,
Yeah.
and it must be the McLellan seminar on the C8. What I want to do, you know, there's a lot of things that none of us know because we're on the outside about what they're doing with the C8, but there's a lot of that we can guess, and there's a lot of it that we ought to be talking back to Chevrolet and General Motors about. And so I'm going to do a little bit of all of that, and hopefully we have a few minutes at the end where I can hear from you guys and some of your thoughts on all of this. When Duntov first proposed mid-engine cars, we were still on narrow tires, and we had the small block and we had big blocks. The issue was for an engineer like Duntov was to get more weight on the driving wheels, more of the percentage of the weight on the driving wheels to get a better acceleration. And you basically are going from 50-50 to 40-60, but you're still leaving the front tires non-traction. And you need more power to even think now about going all-wheel drive. So I'm going to talk a little bit about where the all-wheel drives have gone and what the competition looks like. And though I don't know all the things that the Corvette is doing on day one with the C8, knowing the competition, and Chevrolet, Ted Structor and company know the competition as well. So whatever is going on there really needs to be thought through. A couple of numbers I want to give you. The current ZR1 running the Nurburgring in Germany does a lap in 7 minutes and 14 seconds. I think that's the fastest lap that I'm aware of that GM has put together with the Corvette. The Porsche 918, which is a V8 mid-engine hybrid car, recently set a new production lap record in 6 minutes 57 seconds. So there's a delta there of about 18 seconds. So that's the kind of gain you could expect on a track like that to go from a Corvette that is front engine, about 600 horsepower, to a mid-engine car. In the case of the Porsche, it's somewhere with the hybrid electric motors supplementing the gasoline V8 engine. It's somewhere in the order of 800 horsepower. So basically, everybody gets to use the same tires, the same tire constructions. There's no real deltas there. Brakes, everybody's using ceramic brakes on these kind of cars. And so the difference is going to be the subtle differences of putting traction to the ground and the kind of horsepower you have available, because that's a very fast track. So let me get into the presentation material here. This is actually a picture taken from the Nurburgring of one of the Corvette test cars. How do you like the new paint shop paint system?
Oh, I like that. Cool.
They spent almost $1 billion on the new paint system, and look what they got. I am impressed. Point number one here is that GM has made a major commitment to the Corvette with a new paint shop, and paint shops are incredibly expensive. And also a redo of the assembly facility that's underway, using much more up-to-date technology for doing assembly. And in a couple of years, when they open the plant up again to visitors, you'll be able to see all that. And the question I would ask is, does all of this mean that GM plans to use the Corvette to signal a new day at General Motors and at Chevrolet? And that's a question, and I don't have the answer to that, but I'll pose one. And the point I would make is what I've got right here. It may, and it should. Okay. The Zora. As far as I'm concerned, it must be at the leading edge of exotic performance, as represented by the Porsche 918, which is a 600 horsepower V8, plus about 250 horsepower electric motors, front and rear. And as I said earlier, it runs the Nurburgring in 6 minutes 57 seconds, about 18 seconds faster than the ZR1 Corvette. So, you know, it isn't a night and day, almost can't be done kind of situation. Runs 0 to 60 in 2.5 seconds, and has a base price of, or had, because it's not in production anymore, a base price of $860,000. And you can buy a used one these days for about $1.5 million. And by the time the Zora is in production, the 918 will be 7 years old. So technology moving along at the rapid pace that it does, looking back at something that will be 7 years old, it is not really looking forward. So it may take more than this even. There's the 918 Spider. It's a fairly heavy car, about 3,700 pounds, with all the electric motors and batteries. Copper is heavy, iron is heavy, and it really adds considerable weight to the car. But recently here there was testing of a couple of C8s at the Nurburgring, and it was photographed. I don't know whether these are GM official under the table photographs or whether this is just guys that stood around capturing it. If you listen to the shifts, you can hear the very quick shift of the manual automatic or automatic manual. So now the question is, what's GM going to do? We're going to have to wait and see, but I sure hope that they will treat this as a truly seminal event, a once-in-a-century event, and do a great job of publicizing and demonstrating what they have accomplished. Comments from the audience? Yes?
Do you think they'll have the showing in Detroit in January?
The question is, will there be a showing of the car in January? I have no idea.
To me, that would seem like the big draw.
It's been changed anyway. It's not in January, is it now? It's changed to June?
Next
They'll announce it. Just all you can do is wait.
Does it have to be an all-wheel drive, or can they actually get two wheels to put that power down?
Well, you can put some power down with two wheels, but four wheels get you. I mean, if you've got a 40-60 weight distribution and you don't have drive to the front wheels, you can't put power down in the front wheels, so you're 40% short. That's my only point. That in what Duntov was looking at, he started with a Serv 1, which was a rear drive open wheel car. Serv 2 was a mid-engine V8 with two Chaparral style automatic transmissions, one ahead of the engine and one behind the engine, one driving the front axle system, the other driving the rear wheel system. And then the car that he proposed for production in the late 60s was a mid-engine two-wheel drive car, but with the engine transverse and using a Tornado automatic transmission that basically wound the powertrain around the engine and put the differential at the front of the engine. And when you think about why did he do that, the only logical answer is that it was to make that a three-way differential. From there you drive the two rear wheels and you also drive forward to another differential for the front wheels. And he did not talk to management about that. I think it would have scared the hell out of them. And he surely wouldn't have succeeded with the project. He also had an engine compartment that was large enough to handle the big block. So there was room for expansion. What Ed Cole, who was president of General Motors, wanted was a car that would showcase the Vonkel engine, which he was putting huge pressure on within the company to develop. And what was called the Paris show car, the one with the bifold gull-wing doors, was originally built with a Vonkel engine, but the engine proved not to be very useful and reliable, and so it was ultimately replaced with a small block V8, which runs in it today. But again, if you want 2.5 seconds 0 to 60, you're going to get it with all-wheel drive. You're not and lots of power and very controlled power delivery. Another question? Comment?
Dave,
Yes.
maybe I misunderstood you, but you were showing something on the screen, and you said you don't think the plan will give a tour for another 2 years?
I can't hear you.
I thought I heard you say that the Corvette plant will not be given tours for another 2 years, or did I mishear you?
Well, at least it was originally something like 2 years. It may be less than that now. I don't know when they're going to open. I don't have a number on that. But they're building C8s among other things in there, and they don't want the public wandering through there.
Okay.
That's basically what they're doing. But they are making those major changes to the plant. An all-new paint system out behind the existing plant, and then completely rethinking the assembly process. Way in the back.
What do you think this thing gonna cost? $800,000?
Well, if that's what you're willing to pay. If you can extract that kind of money from you, thank you. Yes, you're a gentleman and a scholar.
No, I didn't.
It's going to weigh about 3,200 pounds. If it's a mechanical hybrid or a mechanical all-wheel drive car, and it's going to be rapacious. There's no reason that it should cost anything more than what we're seeing in the cars today. There's the cost of all the pieces. There's also the manufacturing costs. I don't know how they're going to deal with having bought a new paint shop and new assembly process. That's not going to be cheap. So where they're going to price the car, your guess is as good as mine at this point. Any question here?
Dave, what are the odds you think that they would maintain the current configuration as a lower end Corvette and then the mid-engine as a higher end? Or do you think they're going to have various performance versions of the mid-engine?
The question is, are they going to maintain what's basically the C7 while they're introducing the C8? The only thing I can say is that when they introduce the C8, as with all spectacular introductions, it's going to dominate for a year or 2 years the demand for the car. It just is. There's that level of pent-up demand. And then as things settle back in, do you want to have a front mid-engine car and a rear mid-engine car? Question mark. Is there significant advantage in one over the other? The difference in performance, and that's why I gave you the numbers from the Nurburgring. The front mid-engine ZR1 is not that much slower than what Porsche accomplished with more horsepower, even with the mid-engine. So, it's the difference between those two cars, 15 seconds in a 7-minute lap. Is that going to influence your enjoyment of driving the car in the real world, not on the racetrack? And I would say probably not. Yeah, right here.
I know you said a couple of years ago in a seminar similar to this that one of the problems with the mid-engine or the rear mid-engine is you have to push the cockpit so far forward it limits your footwells. So could that be a limitation on daily drivers?
If that bothers you, yes. You can always have your left leg shortened. I mean,
That hurts.
my engineers, you saw how dedicated they are.
Yeah, they were. They are.
Yeah. Here.
Do you foresee the possibility of a 6-cylinder going into a mid-engine car?
Would you wipe his mouth out with soap? Are we going to do a Fiero? I think is how I would interpret it.
I don't think so. 6, like, no, huh?
I don't think so. I don't think so.
Yeah, there's no power.
Interesting story. Some of you may have heard this story from me, but many years ago when we were developing what became the '84 Corvette, we had a concept powertrain and some of the components in a C3 Corvette and headed out at the Desert Proving Grounds. And there was a big management show that was going on out there, and I was asked to take the car apart to show senior corporate management the chassis system and powertrain system that we were developing. And so we had all this set up in the Chevrolet garage with a bunch of the styling drawings behind the chassis. And the management team comes into the garage and they jump out of the van. The leading guy was the vice chairman of General Motors, Howard Carroll. And I go through my speech, and I had a whole bunch of backups, but when I got to the end of my speech, I asked if they had any comments. And the only person that spoke up was the big shot, vice chairman, Howard Carroll. And his question to me was, can you put a 4-cylinder engine in it? So, yeah, I've been there before. And my answer, which is kind of a Walter Mitty answer, is no, you should cancel the car with grace and dignity before you have to do that.
That's good. I like that.
I did not use that with Howard Carroll.
That's good to hear.
Yeah, that would not have flown well.
That's good to hear.
Another question, right here.
You said about the leg space in the, say, with the mid-engine. If you have a mid-engine, do you still have the 2 golf bag limit for the cargo luggage? Would that still work?
I think one of those blister packs on the roof will work really fine.
Yeah, right.
Yeah,
With the suction cups.
yeah, yeah. I think you're pushing the envelope in the wrong direction here. Any more questions?
You have to go, you have to go on the fine place. You have to give up.
Well, will they be, you think they'll be offered in automatic and manual, or automatic?
The question is, will it be offered in automatic and manual? And the answer is, I don't really know. I would expect that they will do a dual clutch automatic manual transmission, like you heard with the 918, and I think you heard also with the Corvette that it's got some sort of a it's either a high performance automatic or that's manual shifted, or it's a manual transmission like the Europeans are using, where they have two clutches, two shafts, and you select the next gear and then just call for it at the appropriate moment, and it does an automatic shifting clutch to clutch. Well, it's, the computers allow you to do all that today, that you couldn't do it even 10, 20 years ago. Yeah.
What do you mean call for? I mean,
Well, it's set up ahead of time. You've got one clutch that's engaged, one clutch that's disengaged. So you got 7 speeds, and you've got even speeds on one, you've got odd speeds on the other, and you set up the next gear that you want, or it sets it up just for you, and then when you call for it with a paddle shift, you get the one clutch disengaging and the other clutch engaging. The gears are already engaged, but behind a clutch.
in this day and age, with voice, I thought you meant called up.
It was a turn of phrase. Yes. Another question. You guys have calmed down and getting close to dinner time, I can tell.
I know this is my second question.
No, that's
Pick
fine.
anybody else's first. Currently, if you watch a performance of the current ZR1 versus a Ford GT, which costs about $400,000, it seems sort of compatible. So it seems like in one way we're ahead of the game. But
Yeah, the comment is that the current ZR1 and the Ford GT, which is a turbo V6, are very similar. And
that's a mid-engine or rear engine.
yeah, it's a mid-engine. Yeah. So, is there gain to be had with mid-engine? And I think the real gain is all-wheel drive, be it mechanical or with electric motors, hybridization. But hybridization costs you considerably more in weight. There's just no way to avoid it. Yes?
I don't know much about the engineering, but so you're saying there'd be electric motors on the front wheels?
Yeah, he says he doesn't know much about engineering, but he knows enough to say that there's electric motors on the front wheel, yes.
So my question is the batteries. What do you do with them? When do they expire?
Well, the batteries aren't scaled to get you from here to Indianapolis. They're scaled to handle one deceleration, to absorb energy, store energy, and then be able to give it back. Much like a Formula One car is using batteries, or in their case, they're mostly using, I think they're all using capacitors to store energy. So, yeah, it's a very short-term storage solution, and then using the electric motor to generate more power. Take you back to the beginnings of what was ultimately to be the C4. We even looked at twin-engine cars. To get the horsepower levels that we wanted to achieve in the next generation car, would you put like a small 4-cylinder engine off the front axle that you started with and handled all of the emission during startup, which is the critical period. And then you can put whatever big block you want to put behind. You don't start it up until the front system is warmed up the complete driveline. Yeah, and now you've got 150, 200 horsepower on the front, and you've got 600 horsepower in the rear, and you're ready to go. And management wasn't ready for that. That's the way I can describe it. They did not understand. And that's a problem with corporate management. They're a bunch of bean counters for the most part. Well, that's right. When they're not of the kind that you saw here. And these guys are extraordinary. And that's the kind of engineers we are. We do a Corvette. Yeah. Okay. You are dismissed. Thank you.